Hello and welcome to the School Leadership Show. I am Jenn David Lang, and unfortunately, my effervescent co host, Mike Dowdy, is not here. He's stuck in traffic. We will miss him. I hope he is staying cool. It's like in the 90s here in New York. It's crazy. Today, I am so excited because not only do we have three guests, I don't think we've ever had three in the history of the show, but these guests are near and dear to my heart. They are actually some of the closest friends of my younger daughter, Alexa. She's in college now, but she's fortunate enough to have these 11 really close knit friends from high school. Some go back even further. And they were taking over my living room one day, as they do. And all of a sudden, it came to my attention that four of the 11 were interested in, they're rising juniors, and they're interested in going into the field of education. One of them couldn't come today. And I was like, wow, that's music to my ears, because I have spent so much time talking and writing about all of the educators we lost in the Great Resignation and how hard it is to attract new young people into our field. So I was thrilled to hear that, wow, 4 out of 11 were interested in joining our field. So I thought maybe you all, my listeners, might be inspired by their stories and maybe even get some ideas about attracting and retaining members of the Gen Z generation. So, okay, you're not here to listen to me, you're here to listen to them. So a big welcome to our guests. Welcome today. We have Annie Morrison, Audrey Garfinkel, and Isabella Argote. Welcome, welcome. Why don't we just start where each of you introduce yourselves, tell us, I just said your name, but share your name, what you're majoring in college, and what you hope to do in the field of education. So let's go alphabetical. Annie, Audrey, Isabella.
Hi, I'm Annie. I go to Williams College and I'm a rising junior majoring in history and religion as a double major. There's no education major at Williams, but I am doing the program in teaching, um, which will get me a little bit of experience um, as I graduate. But um, I'm hoping to be right now, I'm hoping to be like a high school history teacher. That's my what looks good to me right now, but I also have been really getting into theater at school and am interested in theater education as well. But I like older kids, and I really want to be in the classroom and am very passionate. I love world history, and I'm very passionate about making history relevant because I think it often becomes just like memorizing facts and dates. But there's so much about what has happened in the past that is relevant to the present and makes the present more clear. And I really feel excited about sort of getting high school students excited about that. So
Fantastic. Anybody would want to snap you up, although this is not a job interview. Go ahead, Audrey. Thank you.
Wow, well that was hard to beat. That was beautiful. And thank you so much, Jen, for having us. I am Audrey. I am a finished I just finished my sophomore year at UMass Amherst, so I'm excited to start my junior year and hope to take some more classes that really work in the field with kids. I'm an education major and also a dance major, so my ideal path would bring those both together in terms of either being a dance teacher or bringing movement itself into the classroom, because I think, especially with our younger generation having gone through such an isolated period, I really do believe that getting arts in schools, in the classroom itself, is so crucial to their learning, because they become much more well rounded thinkers and creative people themselves as they grow. So, my goal is definitely to bring my dance background into the classroom, particularly in an elementary school level, in order to have kids working through their own physical development as well as their academics and learning. So I'm really excited.
That's great. I love it. You're all not just one thing, right? I can see Annie bringing theater into the classroom. Some of the best teachers I've had have brought Shakespeare and other things to life. And certainly movement, Audrey. I was recently interviewing some people about bringing standing desks to elementary classrooms. And we often ask our elementary students to sit still all day, which is incredibly difficult and not how most of us learn well. So they would benefit by you bringing that in. So I could see how you might bring all of your interests in. Fantastic. Isabella, how about you? Welcome.
Okay. Thank you again for having us. My name is Isabella. I'm a rising junior at Vassar College, and I'm an English major, but am hoping for maybe an education minor and have also spent most of my mid-high school through post-high school career thus far working with children. I'm interested in elementary education and working with younger kids. And school has always just been like a really important environment to me. Like I've always valued going to school, and I was always the kid that didn't want to go home at the end of the day. And I think as I've grown up, it's become really important to me to find a way to sort of like replicate the environment I was lucky enough to grow up with in school and help lay that like social and academic foundation for younger kids so that as they progress through life, they have kind of that solid foundation that I grew up with.
Absolutely. And they need that passion, right? There's a big focus right now on the science of reading. And we have to make sure if kids aren't passionate from the start, it's very unlikely after the elementary years, it's going to pop up. So no middle school takers. I'm a big middle school person, but glad you're all your elementary and high school. So were there any like specific experiences, like jobs you had in high school or mentors? Annie, you can certainly shout out any high school history teachers who might have inspired you. What was it that led you to want to enter the field? An experience, a person, a situation, and we can take any order. Sure, go ahead, Annie. Yeah.
Yeah. I think that I started being interested in education as a 10th grader in high school, and the job that really got me excited for that was being a writing tutor. And before I was a writing tutor in high school, I was sort of a non-unofficial writing tutor. Like my friends would come to me and ask me to read their essays, and I really enjoyed that. And then once I had the like official position at school, like I went to Bard High School early college, and we had a writing center where like upperclassmen worked to help underclassmen with their writing. And that was just a really special experience for me. I was like felt so fulfilled by it. And just thought it was so cool. And I'm doing it in college too, and it's like the best thing ever. But I had my 10th grade history teacher, shout out Melissa Turoff. I love her. uh she taught world history, and she was so good at making history feel relevant to the present. And I also felt like it was basically my first time ever learning about world history as a 10th grader, which felt kind of insane. And um I felt like I was learning so many things that were completely new to me. Whereas history before then had been the same thing over and over again. Like you learn about the Revolutionary War, and then the Civil War, and then the World Wars, and then the year's over. And so just the new material, and I remember we did a project during COVID too, which was pretty impressive, where we had learned about all this world history, and then we were asked to like pick a country in the world, and like there were a couple options we could choose, and like some sort of social or political issue that's happening in that place, and trace it back to something we learned about historically that happened there. And I had never done history but like that before. I had never been asked to think about how the history that I was learning about shapes the present. And like that just something really clicked then. So I would say that was what sparked my interest in history, and also just her like real connection to students. Like it was so clear that she cared about us and that she wanted to make it fun. And being a writing tutor, I was like, wow, watching those like aha moments where students like they see the connection, they see like what they can do to fix their essay and they're really excited about it. It was just like the best.
That's great. Do you know, Annie, that in 10th grade, I was a summer like math tutor teacher, and that sort of led me to be interested in becoming a teacher. And yeah, I think there's several takeaways for our listeners based on what you said. Well, first of all, just the power of letting our high school students or the young people tutor, because that's kind of a mini way to teach and get your feet wet to see if you're interested. Also, there's a lot of research on the power of one-to-one tutoring in helping students accelerate their growth. So, and then, just hiring passionate teachers who do like project-based learning, like your country project, is not only good for engaging students, but it sounds like those were some of the things that got you interested in the field. So that's good to keep in mind. Did anyone else want to add what, yeah, go ahead, Isabella.
For me, well, I guess in terms of like teaching elementary school, it's kind of like two different experiences that I always tell people about. And the first one is my second grade class and my second grade teacher. And that environment was like such a game changer for me. I think I liked going to school in kindergarten and first grade, but I had struggled a lot with reading and I had struggled a lot with math, but mostly reading, honestly. I was like 6 or 7 levels below my like grade level. And my past teachers had been really worried and they'd, been telling my parents all of these things, scaring them. And my second grade teacher basically encouraged my parents to let me try to read books above my reading level, but that had more like substance to them. And she was like, it's probably going to take Isabella a lot longer to read them. And she might for instance, she might read one book over 2 months instead of a bunch of kind of like early reader books over a shorter period of time. But I think that will kind of like catalyze her want to, like she's gonna want to read more because the books are more interesting, and then we'll see how her like reading journey kind of takes off from there. And obviously now I'm an English major, and if people know me, I read a lot. And second grade was kind of this big like aha moment for me where I was like, oh my God, like books are amazing. And if that hadn't happened, like, I don't know, I probably, I would have figured out how to read eventually and I would have gotten there, but I probably wouldn't like reading to the extent that I like it today, just because it would have been so challenging for me for so long and like all of that kind of stuff. And the environment in general of the classroom was amazing. She was like really sweet. She always brought in baked goods for us to eat on Fridays. And like, she just put a lot of work into, shaping the classroom and planning these trips outside of the classroom that really made going to school super exciting for me, and going home was pretty devastating every day. So that was really amazing and kind of an experience that since then has inspired me to teach younger kids. And then my junior year of high school, my friend and I, the fourth teacher friend of our friend group who couldn't make it today, Tess Olney, we ran a like local book club over Zoom during COVID for, I think it was 3rd through 5th graders. And there were around 7 of them, and we taught every Thursday after school. Like I said, it was on Zoom, and Tess and I would meet beforehand and plan our lesson. Well, we would pick the books and then we would plan our lessons. So whether it was about like character traits or antagonists and protagonists or like the plot or something like that. And planning those lessons, those are little mini book lessons, and then having the like hour we had every Thursday with the kids to talk about the book was like one of the best experiences of my whole life. Like Tess and I still talk about, I've worked with a lot of kids since then. And like I love every experience I have, but that one was just so life-changing for me because I was like, this is 110% what I want to do for the rest of my life. But
wow, I mean, I love that what innovation you had and entrepreneurship to start that book club, right? It was something that helped you and helped the kids at the same time. I love everything you've said. And, the environment, it's a big reminder how important the environment in the classroom is, right? I'm about to summarize a book called Belonging in School to help teachers start off the year. How do you create a sense of belonging? Because it doesn't happen naturally, right? Because you talked about your second grade teacher, not your first, not your second grade teacher. And how do you do that? And it's not magic. Like there are actual steps teachers can take, and she did. So that's incredible. And I had no idea you were so many grades behind level. Like you are Alexa's friend who I never see you without a book. And I'm with Alexa, we're buying gifts, for you. What was she trying to buy? Was it like a first edition of some book? Like you're all about books. So it is so important for us to have teachers who understand not just how to exceed in school all the time, but also like if you are struggling and what it takes to go from struggling to you excelled, but what incredible stories. Oh, moving my heart. Go ahead. Yeah, share with us, Audrey.
I think I maybe come from a more traditional route in the sense that my dad is a teacher, and so education was very prominent in our family, and I also always felt a connection towards taking care of kids younger than me, like my cousins and my younger brother. So I have noticed that, especially in my education major at UMass, a lot of education majors have educators in their families, and it feels a little bit like an obvious choice. And it was for me for a while, but I think the more I started to embrace the role, for example, with teaching dance at camp and being a camp counselor and learning, the babysitting gigs and the even lifeguarding and teaching swim lessons and all of these small little things made me realize how important it actually is, and that it's not just an obvious choice coming from my dad, but that I really do care about seeing the kids learn, because watching them, learn whatever dance I've taught them at camp has just been the most beautiful experience for me. Even when I was worried that I was choosing the wrong path because it was passed down to me, and in reality it was more intrinsic than I even realized, because now I really do feel myself blossoming because of the kids that I teach. So it maybe wasn't just one teacher or one experience, but it was this accumulating kind of life story that I now get to instill in someone else. And I hope that, I'm one of those teachers who eventually makes some other kid go, hey, I like teaching too. So that's the dream, right?
You will be, Audrey. You will, and it's I'm glad that you tested the waters and you asked yourself, wait, am I just doing this because of my dad? I mean, I'm in education. My husband is too, and neither of our kids are interested. So it doesn't necessarily just happen. So so you really did choose it, and I like that you grounded yourself in experiences with kids, whether it was camp counseling, babysitting, teaching dance, right? So you had a sense of like, this is what you wanted to do. So thank you for sharing your stories. I didn't know all those. It's great to hear them. I'm going to go a little bit negative and then we'll come back positive. So a lot of people running schools are my generation. Alexa calls me a boomer. I am not a baby boomer. I am younger, but we do have babies. We do have boomers running schools and Gen Xers or whatever you call Gen. But anyway, so I'm hearing from a lot of leaders with hiring people of your generation complaints, like, oh, their work ethic, they're less interested in working really hard. They just want their work-life balance. That's what's most important. 3:00, we used to stay around for kids. We'd grade papers, we'd stay around, and now, Gen Z, they're out the door, right? Or they're all about prioritizing their own mental health, right? What about the mental health of our students and everyone else? So there have been some complaints. And so I'm wondering, what do you think is either so hard for our generation to work with generation, or do you think this is a misunderstanding? Like, what do you think would help in an older generation as we hire young people who are 22, 23, 24? Any suggestions for us on this end? And it's fine if you don't. I don't expect you to be able to put yourself in the shoes of, and you can also challenge me if if that's not what you're seeing, right? Maybe you're like, no, people aren't going to walk out the door at 3 o'clock just because the kids are gone. Yeah, go ahead, Isabella, you take it.
I can get it started with a half answer, which is just that I've never worked in a school before. I've worked as a camp counselor for a while, and then I also worked at an after school during high school for a bit. And those are kind of all my other education experiences have been kind of like self-run. So those are my only two experiences working with like people of different ages, and my bosses being like significantly older than me and like of a different generation. And I think like the biggest like problems I've seen kind of arise in both those spheres, the after school, but most and like the camp that I've worked at, like have to do with just like communication and like willingness on both parts too to like sit down and have like a open conversation that's not kind of based in like vague assumptions. And I don't know if that necessarily would apply again to schools because I haven't worked in a school environment before, but yeah, that's yeah.
No, that absolutely applies, right? I mean, I work with leaders, and that's what I'm always saying, right? That, it starts and ends with communication, 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 and certainly assumptions get in all of our way of doing the best job that we can and understanding people the best that we can. Did you want to add to that, Annie? Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. I think like what you were talking about with the complaints about mental health, um, and like Gen Z teachers like prioritizing their own mental health, feels really relevant to my camp experience too, actually. Um, I think that we're in an interesting age of mental health right now where people are becoming more aware of sort of how expansive mental health problems really are, and COVID has really impacted that. And um post-COVID meant there was a lot of like very serious mental health issues at camp, the like sleepaway camp that I work at, that we hadn't really seen before, and it was very difficult on the counselors, um because it was a lot more to manage um than it had been in previous years. And that sort of caused us to reevaluate um, what our sort of protocols are in terms of mental health, and who is really like in a space where they can come to camp. And that's obviously a little bit different from being in school because everyone has to go to school. But I would assume that the severity of the problems we were seeing at camp is also happening at schools. Um, and I think that something that we've been working on at my camp that I think could be interesting for school leaders to think about is like typically there is so much that falls on people like teachers and camp counselors because they're often the trusted adults that children are going to when they're having really difficult issues that they're dealing with. Um, and I think that developing systems to directly address that is will help someone of our generation go into a school feeling like they're going to be supported. So like if you see this come up, this is where you go. If you see this come up, this is where you go. And like we are also instating like mental health trainings for all of the staff that we're hiring, which also is, I think, a really good tool for people who are working with kids to have. Um, so I think that that's what I would say. And I think that things like community are also a really good way of helping, especially new teachers, um, feel supported in work that might be very taxing. And so I think that understanding that young teachers are going to perhaps be more aware of the toll that teaching is taking on them, but that doesn't mean that they don't care. It might just be that they have like different needs than you've previously seen.
I like all these, and I appreciate what you've all said, because it's not, sweep these things under the carpet and let's make things back to how they were when we started teaching in the 90s or before or after or 80s. But we have a lot to learn from you, right? And so both you and Isabella are saying, let's be transparent. Let's look at these things. Okay, there are real mental health issues, so let's address them. Maybe we could learn a thing or two. We're losing a lot of leaders because of work-life balance. So if you all are prioritizing that, maybe there are things that we can learn, as opposed to pushing up against and say, well, in my day, we used to stay at the school until 8 p.m., which some of us did, but that doesn't mean it was healthy. So I appreciate what you have to say. Yeah, go ahead, Audrey. You want to add to?
Yeah, adding on, my camp also does mental health trainings, and we call it MESH, mental emotional support health. And a lot of what we talk about during these trainings is language. And I think the way we talk about certain things is very different generation to generation, which can be how conflict arises between them, especially, with they them pronouns becoming more present, and even other pronouns such as these and zis. And even I had a conversation recently with my dad, who's an educator, as I mentioned, about just the grammatical structure of using they them pronouns. And I think, yeah, one of the most crucial aspects of bringing everyone in a school community together is to have a clear set of expectations in terms of language. So in referring to mental health crises and, just like, for example, OCD tendencies, one might say, oh, so and so has OCD, when in reality they might just have those tendencies because they do something very specific in their routines that helps them live their lives better. And so, someone who may not have grown up with the term OCD is confused by both ways of talking about it, and just an overarching system, as Annie mentioned, of language and how we talk about kids with certain struggles, or even teachers with certain struggles, admitting these things so that we can normalize these acronyms or pronouns or whatever it is, and we can all work to be on the same page.
You're reminding me, well, first of all, it sounds like camp is doing a lot of the preparation work. So you're reminding me that when we do hire young people, we need to not treat them like empty vessels with, all the knowledge to be filled, but you do bring a lot, whether it's this experience from camp or, I want to do the flip side of all the positive things that I've heard about Gen Zers. And I understand these are stereotypes and it's not everyone, but, I've heard that people say that young people, first of all, you're digital natives, you're very comfortable with technology, you value diversity in a different way than older generations do, you work better in teams, and you have much more, your minds move toward innovation. So do any of these resonate with you? And is there any way that you think schools can help support this new generation? Is there anything you would want to be in place, or any of these characteristics that you would want schools to highlight for you to work there? Go ahead, Ania.
I think that the innovation and teamwork really speaks to me. It's very interesting to hear that people have said that Gen Z is better at working in teams. I feel so curious about that. That's so interesting to me. That's definitely something that I value. Like, I love working with people, and collaboration, and opportunities for that sound really great to me. And I think that because we're the young voices, we do have a lot to offer in terms of new ideas. And so I would say an openness to new ideas and experimentation would definitely be something I'm looking for in a school.
Great. Go ahead, Isabella. Thanks, Annie. I love that.
On the topic of that is also something that's interesting to me about Gen Z being or enjoying working in teams more because I also really enjoy working with people and I didn't maybe that is a result of, Gen whatever. But I think that like I Annie, you mentioned something earlier about like community within a school, and Annie and I had lunch earlier and we were talking about this, but like um teamwork, not even just like centered necessarily around one project, but like having a community, I guess a school environment where if I'm teaching at a school, the environment of the school is very collaborative in the sense that like teachers, whether or not they're teaching the same grades or, are working together before or after school to talk through problems and like work on questions they have. And that kind of thing, I think, is really appealing to me. So maybe, yeah, yeah.
No, that's great. When I started teaching, you were very much in your own silo, right? You showed up to school, you went to your classroom, you literally, as well as figuratively, closed the door, right? And maybe once a month there would be a staff meeting with the whole school, and now you have, teams, the fifth grade team, the math department, right? People meet in teams and there is much more of a feeling of collaboration. So it's interesting to hear that that is something that's appealing to the two of you and helpful for leaders to know. I don't want this to go on too long, but I would love to hear, have any of you thought about where, after you start teaching, you imagine yourself in 5 years or 10 years or 20? I don't want to put pressure because unlike my generation, your generation, I don't know, I heard we'll have like 14 jobs by the time you're in your 30s or something. So if you have no idea, this is not pressure. It's just, has anybody thought about it? Yeah, Audrey.
I definitely have been thinking about it because, as I mentioned, I have been thinking, even though I'm an education major, about how I can use my dance and education skills outside of the realm of a traditional school teacher. Um, and one of my dreams, one of my supposed pathways, um, I've been interested in taking dance to areas of probably in a city, but areas in a city where kids don't have as many outlets, especially in lower income neighborhoods or in um, neighborhoods that are either on the outskirts of the city or that aren't getting the resources that every, you know, school gets. And I've been thinking about how to work at some sort of nonprofit that brings the arts to those communities. So I don't know whether it's in 5 or 10 or 20 years, but I do see myself working maybe even as a dance teacher at a YMCA or at an after school volunteer program if I have the time and the resources myself. I would love to really bring arts to areas where kids need outlets that aren't given outlets.
Love that. It's so important. Sometimes things like the arts are the only reasons that kids are in school or are connected to adults, right? You see them really shine, whether it's in a after school club or a whole other nonprofit like the YMCA. So how wonderful that you would be a part of that. That's amazing. Anybody else? You don't have to be pushed to think about 5, 10, 20. So is there anything else that you would like to share? It's so special to have this opportunity to have young people. So do you have any thoughts about how schools are going to look completely different because of AI and technology? Or is there anything else about you that you would like to share, or anything about schools, anything us older people can do to make this profession more hospitable? That's within our realm. Like, we can't double your salaries, although they should be for the most important job in the world. But yeah, any thoughts on any of those for a final? Yes, go ahead, Annie.
Yeah, I don't know how this really fits into our conversation exactly, but um I've just been I've been sort of keeping track of my high school even after I've graduated, talking to some people that I know who still go there. Um, and there's something, it's just interesting to watch how it's evolving. Um, it's a school that is an early college, so part of the philosophy of the school is that students are given more trust, um, and higher expectations. And sometimes when the students break that trust, school officials have to decide what that means for the school. And I guess I've been watching the trust break down in a way, and there's been more behavioral issues and much more animosity between students and principals, students and teachers, which feels really surprising and sad to me. And I definitely don't claim to have all the answers to this issue, but I have been thinking about how important it is to, like, just the power of telling students that you trust them, and the power of saying, um, I believe that you can excel in school. I believe that you can take this privilege and use it to your educational and social benefit. And um, I think that there's a lot of ways that students are behaving that feels very confusing and perplexing to adults. And there's some questions about how to approach it. But I think that for me, being given that trust was part of what made me so successful as a student, um, and just made me a happy person. It really sucks to be in a school where you feel like your teachers are trying to catch you doing something bad, or expect you to be misbehaving or failing or whatever. So that's just what I wanted to say.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think a lot of the misbehavior is because students have lost some of their trust in schools. And so rather than us waiting for students to develop that trust, we need to trust them first. And that is, I think you're absolutely right. And I like that, what you said, the power of telling students you trust them and demonstrating that you trust them. Any other final words anyone wants to say? But there's so much we could talk about, but I want to be respectful of your time. Mike always makes me end. No, well, thank you so much. It's so great to be able to be in the minds of some young people. And if you are the types of people who are going to be teaching in our schools, we are very fortunate. So grab some more people like you and pull them in. And I know the three of you will do great things. And I hope that I get to be around to see some of it. And yeah, you were all fantastic. So again, thank you, Annie Morrison, Audrey Garfinkel, and Isabella Argote. Thanks for your time and good luck with the rest of your 2 years of college. So thank you. Take care.
Thanks so much,
so
Jen.
much.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the School Leadership Show, a podcast for aspiring and practicing school leaders. Send your comments, questions, and show ideas to me, Mike, at schoolleadershipshow.com. And please consider rating the podcast in iTunes and leaving a comment. And definitely pass the show along to your colleagues.